shut us down again. Are we live? It says we're live on Facebook.
Does it? Oh, then I guess we're live. It's directing me, but
yeah, we're
we
live.
Go. Live now. So round 2. Congratulations. Do you guys want to hear all that music again, or have we heard it enough?
We're good.
Heard it enough.
All right, we'll jump right into this. So that's the fun. I don't know where I was at in my little monologue there before, but we're doing something that I think is a little unprecedented. I can't speak. Unprecedented. That's it.
Unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
There you go. Speak
Right.
English. So anyway, with this whole free online conference thing, we're going to be marathoning it with you guys, taking about 30 minutes breaks in between speakers. We just got done with Rick Allen Ross, Robert Monson, and Tamice Spencer are here with us with Subculture Incorporated. And we got to speak with Robert fairly recently within the last month. Great dude. Love what they're doing. Glad to have him come on, speak more, and super excited about this. We'll see, as long as we have no more technical difficulties, we'll be on for the next 50 minutes. So let's jump right into things. Thanks guys for being on.
Yeah. So we're excited. So just a little bit about us. Tamice runs Subculture, and she's my boss with Subculture. And so just give us a little bit about Subculture, and then we'll jump into today's topic, Tamice.
Sure. Yeah, I started Subculture to advocate for Black students. I did a lot of campus ministry and realized that most of the time campus ministries, the help that they were offering was very theoretical and abstract. And the students that I was dealing with, however, were dealing with issues that were real tangible and had real needs. And so I thought, what would it look like for us to create something that came alongside people who were trying to reach Black students, that actually put some actual bread in their hands. Mm-hmm. And so Subculture was created just out of being annoyed about the fact that I couldn't actually tangibly show students that they were loved and that they had dignity and deserved to finish school. So what we do is basically help students when they face a crisis that would cause them to have to leave college. And we do that mainly by creating content and doing consulting work. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And we also give out scholarships.
Yeah.
And so content, scholarships, you name it. We do a lot of things with Subculture. So that's the organization we help run. And then were you about to say something, Seth?
Yeah, I'm curious though, because for a lot of people, they might not know the need. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming you guys will talk about that, but I really want to dive into that a little bit, what the need is to where this has risen to the level of doing something like this. I think it's absolutely amazing, but a lot of people might not know,
Yeah, I think. You want me to jump in, Rob?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our tagline is that we clear a path, right? And I think what I was dealing with in my own life and in the lives of the students that I was working with was that they had a lot of barriers, not just to graduating, but to faith. And what Subculture is trying to do is decolonize everything that we do, from the way that we give scholarships to the way that we do crisis relief to the way that we talk about faith and talk about scripture, talk about God. And so we have kind of 4 barriers that we've identified that are cultural barriers, which have to do with just whiteness and supremacy that is the foundation of our country. We have spiritual barriers that students face. Say what? Stop. We have spiritual barriers that I think are unique in the sense that they're connected to some of that white supremacy as well, right? So we have to debunk this idea of a white conservative Republican Jesus, right? And so on the other end of that,
wait, there's no white Jesus?
I'm feeling all of a sudden I just realized.
Are you feeling attacked?
I'm a little outnumbered. And this doesn't happen that often.
You guys need a break.
Not at Fade to Gray.
It's hard for a lot of people to hear. So I don't know if you need a break or stop the line.
I can unpack that a little bit. Obviously, that's a tagline that I use quite a bit. But let's camp out.
And we'll unpack that. We'll unpack that the white Jesus part in the actual like in the content of what we're going to talk about, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So that's a good question. I feel you.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
calling
Let's
all
talk
white
about
people
white
racist?
Jesus.
Is that what you guys are doing?
Oh
right now?
my gosh. Trolling from the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead, Tamice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like thrown off now because I'm really ready to talk about white Jesus and how he tried to kill me. But
No.
yeah, I think like
Jesus was white. What are we talking about?
Oh my God.
All
this
right,
might have
so-
to turn into like a
all right,
counseling
so keep
session.
going. So people who might be listening right now, it's kind of maybe like offensive, like, oh, here we go, more democratic speak, like, because a lot of times this can be, ends up in political parties. It ends
Yeah.
up being triggering
Yeah.
for people that like don't consider themselves privileged, worked hard for everything they had, and now they're being called privileged. So even that conversation, sometimes like people automatically start tuning out. So
So what I want to say here, so let's sketch this out and clean it in the sense of, let's get through subculture's mission, and then that will lead beautifully into the topic of what we are
perfect.
actually talking about. And hopefully walking away from this conversation, hopefully we will give people more food for thought, because you're right, often these kind of topics polarize people to think, oh, I can check out from this, and I have the luxury of not talking about this because faith, race, Christianity, politics are things that I have the luxury from checking out, right? And so hopefully stick with it, stay with it, stay with it. But so give us a bit more about subculture's mission and the need there, like even the financial barriers too.
Yeah, so it's like most students face about $10,000 of debt after financial aid in school. So if they work full time, let's just say they work full time and they go to school full time, that still only makes up about $7,000 for them for the year. So they're already lacking about $3,500, give or take, and that's without a significant crisis that might happen to them while they're in school. And so we're just trying to raise funding to help students who face crisis, because they can't like call a rich uncle. Most of the time my students were like being invited to these really expensive conferences and they couldn't pay rent. And it like bothered me so much, because I didn't have the ability to step into that, but I had the ability to bring them to these conferences that would continue to, like, I don't know, indoctrinate them to a Jesus that didn't have actual tangible help for them. And so when I moved from Atlanta, I just decided that I didn't see something quite like what was bothering me. And so I decided to just make it. And so that's what we do. And we partner with organizations, ministries, universities, all of that. We just want Black students to thrive. And we're either trying to clear barriers for them or clear barriers that people have to reaching them. And so that's what we're after.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And then we noticed, for example, we had a scholarship request last week for $100. And what was heartbreaking about that is $100 would make or break a Black student's whole year. And we noticed for white students when we were doing college, now, yes, these are generalities, so don't come for us. Like, I was a broke white student. Yes, we know that because we've done a lot of campus ministry. So we're not dumb. So we noticed $100 though, by and large though, $100 would make or break a Black student's whole career in college. And so we found though that $100 was a significant barrier to our Black students understanding who God was, though, in a way that wasn't on the same level of our white students. And so hence subculture.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
and then so go ahead, Omar. What were you saying?
No. I was saying that's an awesome way to, the saying is, see the need and fill it. And I feel kind of like that's what Tamice has done. And, Robert come alongside, helping bring content, and the conversation and bringing awareness is awesome. And I like your posture already, Robert, from the beginning, just kind of like understanding that there's going to be people, whether justified or not, that's not the point, but there's going to be people who are going to have an emotional reaction to these type of conversations, and to get past that barrier to where where everybody can say, like, no matter how you feel about it, there's still a need here. This is still happening. It's like,
Yes.
we can't be blind. And once you hear the conversation, or once it's up to you then as responsibility. Myself included, anybody, like, okay, well, what can we tangibly do? And it's one of those things, like, denial is the worst thing that somebody can do in a privileged position.
Precisely.
To try to say that it's not there. You're not going to lose anything by admitting that maybe you've had privilege in your life. So.
Precisely, which leads us then to the topic today. Like, this is a good, man, we just weaving this in. So
Jesus is at work, brother. Feel the revival.
Come on, somebody. So the topic, when Chris first presented it to me, he said, hey, we're doing this thing called Big Tent Revival. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I was like, where are y'all coming from? And and he shared some of the things under this big tent. And I thought it was really interesting, obviously, one, because I grew up as an atheist, and y'all were doing this kind of play on words with Big Tent Revival. And I thought that was very interesting.
Thanks.
To me. And the thing that I wanted to bring to the table is this notion of race and religion and Christianity and history. And I wanted to bring all of those to the table and have a discussion. And these things don't have to be exhaustive. And just have a discussion, just an open, honest discussion. Because what I feel, honestly, even when you think of big tent revivals, part of what pains me is when I see a lot of people deconstructing or shying away from their notion of Christianity or being hurt from Christianity. If we're honest, most, if you could dig in, what they're really hurt by is white Christianity.
Yeah.
If we're honest. And so often when people say they're deconstructing or I'm hurt by the church, if I will ask people, describe to me what you're hurt by. As they begin to say all the things they're hurt by, I usually am saying, like, a lot of that are issues of white supremacy. And they don't have to be, they can be, they don't have to synonymously be one and the same with Christianity. And what I want to bring to the table is there is a tradition, there are rich traditions outside of white conservative Christianity that many they're not even aware of. And so just mentioning Christianity can be triggering for some, even the notion of how subculture was formed. People aren't even aware that there are traditions that are based in other, in Christianity, based in other things and historical things outside of other ethnic groups outside of Christianity. Go ahead, Seth. What were you going to say?
As the only white person in the room.
Well, I mean, I'm halfway there.
Okay.
Some people may argue more. Some people may argue more.
What is white Christianity?
Yeah.
And I know I actually know the difference, and but I'm going to ask that question. What is? I mean,
so I'm going to take it I'm going to answer it in a different way than what people would answer it. So I will root this conversation in Black Christianity first, rather than root it in white Christianity.
That's the
So
first part.
yeah.
That,
So I will
that's good,
Go
Robert.
ahead and
'cause
decenter that.
yeah, so I will decenter white Christianity and center
Yeah.
Black Christianity.
Yeah.
So
Good. It's good.
so when I look at how the traditions of how for lack of a better term, Black theology has formed within America, there have been this rich tradition of Black men and women who have found hope in Holy Spirit as liberator. They found these rich traditions in identifying with the Hebraic people, to the point where Frederick Douglass, when you read his scathing critiques of white Christians, his presumption were that they're actually white Christians were not Christians at all. So how he would frame that question were, when he looked out at Christianity, his presumption was seemingly white Christians are not Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you read his critiques, were any person that could enslave another human being and then go into the house of God and sing and clap and dance, well, that person does not know God.
So hearing you talk, Robert, obviously, there's my obviously again, but it is obvious the answer to this if you've heard the earlier episode. But I mean, you speaking like this, I mean, clearly you have to be going to an all-Black church then, right now. I mean, like with that type of logic and thinking, like, I mean, you wouldn't be caught dead being attending an all-white church.
Because
Black churches can be steeped in whiteness too.
Yes, that's the other thing. One, because the reason why I'm rooting this conversation outside of what has become synonymous with Christianity is because there seems to be these notions that we have accepted as fact, right? Like, and merely calling attention to it almost is jarring, right? And everyone's like, whoa, like I haven't even thought of that. And I'm like, okay, it's okay to examine things, like why we believe what we believe is okay, right? Like, so no, I actually go to a profoundly multiracial church. It's actually more white than anything. It's actually a pretty largely white church.
So when you're speaking this, it's not like you're speaking at a place of anger
I don't
or
have
hate.
a Wakandan church, if that's lest anyone fear. That might be lit though. So I guess what I want to say is there is a testimony of within our nation of an enduring gospel witness of people who under intense pressure who adopted a religion that did not find its origins in Europe, because that's also a lazy narrative. And they found immense rest, immense peace, and immense endurance in the Bible, to the point where they looked at their captors and said that they don't know the Bible, right? And so I would say that Christianity is not the white man's religion. It finds its richness in people who are minorities and oppressed people. And I think that's why if you look at Black people and people who are oppressed, you will find some of the richest preaching and teaching. Go ahead, Tamice. You look like you were going to say something.
I have nothing to say. That was great. I have nothing to add. I looked like I was tweaking, but I was trying to find my Frederick Douglass, the narrative, to see if I could find that quote, but I don't know where it is. So.
I think that what you just said was poetry. It was spoken word, beautiful.
Yeah, because I think often when we come at Christianity in America, we come at it through the white lens. But I think a greater question to look at then is what other people group or what time in history would captives take on a religion to the point of so identifying with it that they would take it, be subsumed in it, and so identify with it that they would say, oh, this is so rich that y'all aren't saved. Like, this is so rich, and these texts are so true, and we find such rich traditions. Y'all definitely aren't following these tenets, right? And then there's this lasting legacy. Throughout the ages, Black people have stayed true to the traditions of the text. Now, not saying Black people have not been perfect. So that's to your point, Omar. That's what I'm saying. I haven't been like, I'm only with Black people to the exclusion of all the other races. That's also, I want to give that disclaimer.
So one of the people currently in this webinar has a question, and it kind of flows right along with this. And I want to ask, I'm just going to read it because I think it applies. But I may have misheard the explanation, but are you saying white Christianity lacks real Christians because they have blind spots like slavery, which is obvious in 2020, but maybe not in the 1800s? Wouldn't all races have some type of blind spot to sin while still being Christian?
I mean, I know Robert probably has a more eloquent answer, but to me,
no, you.
I would say that the question, while I understand where it's coming from, it's kind of bothersome in the sense that it's not so much that white Christianity has blind spots; it has disagreement. So it's completely a different thing. Like, it's not so much that in the 1800s there was this blind spot to slavery. It's the fact that there was this severe disagreement with God. Like, to hate something that God loves, period, is a disagreement from the get-go. And so I think the part of the worldview of being a Christian is that we found ourselves in some sort of agreement with God, right? And so to me, that's where white Christianity begins to go off the road, is the fact that there is this insidious disagreement with God about those who are made in God's image. The other thing I would say about the 1800s, when Europeans began to take over the narrative, is the fact that they forgot they were the other, right? Like, they aren't Jews, they're Gentiles. And I think understanding that you were the other in this whole text, the text ain't talking about you, it's talking about them. And so to understand that I'm other and I'm being brought into this story, that in and of itself creates a level of humility that would have probably checked white Christianity if other people had power at that time. Though that's my thought.
Yeah, and yes.
That's good.
It's eloquently said, because I think that is where things massively went off the road. And you see, even before America's inception, European Christianity went off. And this, please hear me, this is not a scathing critique of white people at its core. I love me some white people. So if the thing you're taking away is like, oh, they brought on some Black people to hate on white people, please, woosah. I love white people. The reason why this is important is merely because of this big tent revival, because a lot of people leave Christianity because they feel that the questions they have, the rubs within themselves are at odds with Christianity. And my point is, it doesn't have to be. Right. And so when European Christianity started to go off the rails and they started to colonize everything, is with this othering piece. when you understand that Jesus himself probably had more in common with a Mexican immigrant, you will profoundly understand the gospel in ways that, I mean, light bulbs will go on in your head. You will understand Jesus, who his whole life, Jewish people by the time of Jesus, all had been in slavery and bondage their whole life. So Jesus actually probably had more in common with indigenous people and with chattel slaves than with the average white European person. So if you know that, you will read the Bible in such different ways. Does that make sense? How your posture and humility, you will teach the Bible differently. It will make chattel slavery impossible. It will actually make it impossible. So part of my point in putting this on the table is the strain of Christianity we made here in America is impossible when you read the text in certain ways. And therefore, all of the atrocities that we've done here to the LGBT community, the atrocities we did to indigenous people, and making people feel like they had to choose between their faith and conversion therapy with LGBTQ community. Those things are atrocities to me. And it's like, do I have to be gay or choose Christianity? That's a false choice. And my point and why I have passion is like, no, that's because of a strain of Christianity that was created. And if you understand the Savior that you're following, and if you understand the people group that he came from in historical context, then it all makes sense. And so I'm saying in who I am, my ethnic identity, and what I bring to my Christianity, and if you guys will allow Black people humbly to come and present history in the Bible to you in ways humbly, we can bring something enlightening to the text. That's what I would say to Christianity.
Wow. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I don't know what it feels like out there in Facebook Live world, but like the tone, I think for me is just changed. You like hearing the way you put that, because I had a question and I'm still going to ask it, but I feel like I already know the answer after the way you explained the heart behind what you guys are doing there and comparing Jesus to a Mexican immigrant. I felt like I've been pretty open-minded and pretty liberal in my stance in Christianity, but I haven't really even looked at it that way, or the fact that Jesus literally has more in common with slavery or Black people or the Jews. He was a Jew. I don't know how that disconnect happens, but that leads into my question. I was gonna ask, because we're talking deconstruction and how people are deconstructing away from what we're calling quote unquote. I liked when you called it like European Christianity, because it seems less threatening to to white people. But
because if we say white, it feels like attack like
it does for some reason. It does, but
European is nicer. It's a euphemism.
Isn't it interesting how white people are a little sensitive in that regard?
Yeah, it's nice. It's Caucasus Mountains.
But so my question though, like with working with Black students who are deconstructing their faith, do you have many who are deconstructed from what you might consider Black Christianity? But the reason I would be hesitant to even ask that question after listening to your explanation is there such thing really as Black Christianity in America? Even as Tamice said earlier, even most of the Black churches are being influenced by the same Jesus. So even if people are deconstructing from Black church, are they deconstructing from Black church, or is it still, or what are they deconstructing from? So
That's an
Great
interesting question. Go ahead, Tamice.
Well,
have
I was
thoughts.
thinking
That's
about it
interesting.
like in the sense of I've actually never, Omar, like never heard anyone say Black Christianity. I do hear Black church. And so I think even within that statement of the Black church, there are very problematic things within the traditions within the Black church that I think are sort of that younger people are sort of bucking against. But I think even within the Black church, there was a preservation, for the most part, there was a preservation of certain things that were true to Black identity. And so for me, that's the difference. Like, I don't really know what a Black Christianity would look like, but I do think there are definitely problematic things within the Black church, for sure.
Yeah, this is a very thoughtful question. I think there are things that I would say are contained within Black theology, and don't get thrown off by that. They are merely things that are emphasized within Black theology, that are merely things that traditional theology don't emphasize. In the same way that people give feminism a bad rap. But when you boil down feminism is actually helpful, because essentially feminists are like, hey, please don't treat us like trash, we're women. And feminism, that term, is an indictment against our culture. Feminism wouldn't have to exist if our culture wasn't trash. And so in like manner, Black theology would not have to exist if regular theology was not
right.
trash. So people they're like, Black theology, I just do regular theology. I'm like, no, regular theology is deficient. It's vitamin D deficient. So
vitamin B.
Right. But I would say in like manner to what Tamice said, there are some very destructive things that we find in some black traditional churches.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because like,
sure.
I think most people who are listening probably grew up in white traditional churches, and so what are some common destructive things found?
Sure. So a book that I recommend is by James Cone, who is the father of Black liberation theology. And the book is called My Soul Looks Back. It's very short. He delivers a scathing report to everybody. White America, Black America, Black churches. Everybody gets a piece. It's everyone's equal opportunity. Everybody,
even Korean Jesus.
Yeah, actually, Asia does get a little piece. Actually, everybody gets a little equal piece of the pie. I think, yeah, even Latin America, everybody gets a little piece. So,
all right.
So
equal opportunity.
If everyone in your life wants to get a little hurt feelings, My Soul Looks Back. It's a little $8.99 purchase. I probably bought like 10 of them for my friends, so you might not be able to find a lot of them. So, but I would say probably one thing that's picked up in a lot of churches that I hear most often is a lot of religious rules. So I think something that developed, especially after slavery, was the notion that good works could save you. So something that happened, that even my father, who was not religious at all, was this notion that if you didn't smoke, you didn't slow dance, and you didn't drink, you didn't show your shoulders, you didn't like dance in any way, you could be saved. So which led to very religious, controlling, oppressive homes. And also in those same homes, homosexuality was a no. In those same homes, like a lot of abusive, like they would try and beat homosexuality out of you. And so it's a shame and an indictment on that form of Christianity. And so those traditions pass from generation to generation, and I know why they developed, but it doesn't make them okay.
Yeah,
You
I was
know,
gonna
so
say, I when I hear you talking about that, I think, well, of course you're gonna feel that way as a black man because you want to succeed in white America, and you already are behind the eight ball, as they say. So like, of course you don't want to be labeled a slut on top of that. Of course you don't want to add to things that are going to get in your way, because already the color of your skin is going to slow you down.
yeah,
So it makes
yeah. I
sense
mean,
that
and
you
they still
have more
trash though.
you have more pressure. It's
Yeah.
trash. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not justifying, but it seems like it it's product of the system for sure.
You're right. You're right. You're
I
absolutely
would
right.
also add, though, in terms of the Black church, just having worked with Black college students for so long, a lot of the things that were refreshing for them was the ability to ask questions. So a lot of times in the Black church, it was like, we don't question God. And I remember so many times I would do these like little things where I would just go out and say, like, if you could ask God anything, and the students would be like, we're not supposed to do that. We don't question God. And it's like, never even knowing that the Bible is actually filled with questions. Like, that's all people do in the Bible is question God. And like, so their ability to kind of enter in and kind of have a level of dignity and nuance to what they believe, I think is really important to them. And it wasn't really offered. There are some churches that are great at that. But for the most part, I think there was a disconnect generationally with students who had a little bit more curiosity and a little bit more exposure, obviously, than those who were older than them. And so when their questions, their genuine questions, were met with being shut down, I think it just created a sense in which they don't want anything to do with it, and they'll go on their own search. The other thing that is common is the whole like belonging before you believe, and not feeling like I can fully be myself, that everything is a show, and like, the hypocrisy, I know what these deacons are doing back here, but then they're telling me I'm going to hell because I went to the club last night. I mean, like literally that specific.
I get that.
And so I think for a lot of Black young people, it's this longing for authenticity, this longing for someone to admit that there is actually truth outside of the Bible, right? Like they have nuance and they have ideas, and oftentimes people don't affirm that, yes, this is true. And I mean, what I see with Jesus is like, the guy comes up and says, what do I have to do? And Jesus says, well, what does it say? What do you say? Like, what does the law say? How do you read it? And there's this affirmation that like, I have a brain and I can think and I can reason. And I think, for me, I feel like if the Black church doesn't begin to take that turn, then they're going to continue to just hemorrhage Black young people. And that bothers me. Obviously, that's why subculture exists, but it really bothers me.
True. It's true, and something else that I want to put on the table about faith and Christianity, especially among Black people, is that this notion of atheism being kind of a luxury of atheism is a luxury of privilege, right? And when I look at the faith of the marginalized and all that we have endured as a people, often, like Christianity and religion is seen as like an opiate of the people. And it's like, oh, you had to because like you needed to believe in something. And it's used as like this negative, scathing critique. But I want to flip it on its head and say, could we possibly look at the beauty of a people who clung to their ideals and their morals and their values, and in a faith that superseded what they were able to see in the natural, right? And that it was more than an opiate of the people, one, and also that it meant everything to them. They were able to rise above their socioeconomic standing. They were able to be delivered from chattel slavery. They were able to keep progressing through every epoch of time within America. Mm-hmm. They were able to be delivered from Jim Crow in a reign of terror in America. and to keep progressing into ultimately full civil right freedoms. I always say it this way. I am the first person born in my family with full civil rights in completion.
Yeah.
Wow.
The first person.
Wow.
And I think it doesn't hit people. The first, like, I am the fullness of my ancestors' dreams on American soil.
Yeah.
And so I think so often I think people look at Christianity, and I get it because I was an atheist, and I'm pretty critical. I don't know. I still am halfway atheistic and thinking. But
Be careful. Be careful now.
I just mean, like, it depends on the day, the lunar cycle, what color I'm wearing. I don't know. But I think when you look at what continues to happen because of an enduring faith, when you look at the church, the Black church was the center of social change. Mm-hmm. I think it's also incredible. So I want to also put that on the table, that for many other ethnic groups, church and faith is something philosophical that they get to debate among themselves. But for the Black people, it is something that was essential for survival and thriving. Yeah. And so it's also a beautiful story of redemption for Black people, that it's interwoven and interspersed with our thriving. We would not be having this conversation all together without the story of Christianity and the Black church at all. And I think that is beautiful. Even if you don't believe in Christianity, I think it's beautiful. So yeah. Thoughts? And if you have questions, Seth, go.
Well, no, I don't have questions, but I can tell you that most white evangelicals do not think about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's not in their repertoire. I was raised kind of believing that, the Black church was kind of out of control, a lot of dancing, a lot of chanting, a lot of yelling, but like good old town. But it wasn't, we don't, I don't know the history. I didn't grow up learning that. So it never really impacted the way that I evaluated my faith or viewed things moving forward. And kind of seeing it now, 30 years in, it's pretty eye-opening.
I mean, just the fact that, I know this in my history because being a part of Assemblies of God for a decade, the greatest move of God ever that happened in the United States, move of God in quotations, because what his power had to do with Black people, but it was kind of like swept under the rug with the Azusa Street revival. That was all the Black church and Black ministers and white people coming alongside and helping what they were already doing, and throwing race aside and things great Pentecostal moves of God were happening at that time. But then we're like, oh yeah, they woke up one day like, oh yeah, that's right, we're different colored skin. You're supposed to be over there. What are you doing? And then
yeah. Shout out to the Assemblies of
God. but there's some rich history that doesn't really get talked about, and it's just like a footnote in the Assemblies of God history.
Yes.
Very much so.
I have many thoughts on it.
So, okay. Can I ask some questions on just some logistics in regards to Southern Culture Incorporated?
No questions.
Where's the money coming from?
You tell me, bro.
So no, for real,
Jesus.
I heard that from Robert, and I was like, this is amazing. And I'm sure there's grants. I'm sure there's ways of getting that. But do you have donors? Is there funds?
It's mainly donors, and but again, the whole idea of decentering whiteness in a way of wanting to say there are brilliant people on my team who think and lead and who can write. And so let's generate revenue and advocate for people just as much as we ask for donation, because we don't want people to think I'm helping the little Black children
Right.
make it through school. I mean, we'll take the donors, but we don't want it to be a sense in which the matriculation of our students is dependent on charity from white people, because most of the time white people are the ones who give to a nonprofit just because of traditions and things. But so I think for us, it's really important to do both and to generate revenue to advocate for these students using our own giftedness and not being pimped out by people who would use our giftedness to make their big organizations rich. Rather, we create our own stuff. We use the revenue from that stuff to pay it forward, right? To say we believe in your dignity and we want to see these students as agents of change, not charity cases. And so that's like super important to me. So yeah, we do have donors. We have a couple of like corporate grants and things like that. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we're open.
no,
Anybody's a millionaire.
Yeah.
Robert wants benefits.
I'm just saying.
I was like,
I mean, there's just a lot of money in white evangelicalism. If only there was like a way of funneling that in. However,
because we had, so we have donors, and then we also have these revenue generators where we wrote a book highlighting Black believers throughout history who have made notable contributions. We're also working. Tamice and I are co-authoring a book on the theological implications of hip hop.
Interesting.
And the kids, we're doing we found like we have a bunch of millennial parents that are asking questions about their kids, and so we're actually doing children's books. So like I never thought we'd do a children's book, but we're working on that too. So yeah.
And so we just have a couple different ways, and then we have the podcast and stuff, and people support the podcast through Patreon and stuff. So a couple different ways we make money for the organization.
Merrily eating off these streams.
Well,
for sure.
We're about at the hour mark. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue this conversation. Plus, there's a really great question we're going to ask from Chad. So to kind of wrap things up for the Facebook Live feed, what's the name of the podcast? Like, where can people access that? Because I even forget.
No, it's okay.
You want to say it?
We have two.
Yeah, so you can go to thehive.show. That's where all of our segments are located, but we have the Hive, which is kind of a amalgamation of different shows all in one. And then we have Where's the Lie, which is the one that we started with Robert, myself, and Tamara. That one's a little more spicy, a little more, it's for petty and pious people, we'll put it that way.
Okay. And this book, where can we find that?
On subcultureinc.org. If you go to our website, there's a tab that says, I think it says resources or publications or something like that, and you can get it there.
And I do believe Elizabeth is right now putting all those links in the comments too. So
snap, y'all on it today. Okay.
So we're trying. We're maybe round 2 for Big Tent Revival. We'll go even bigger and stuff. And
snap. Okay.
We'll make everybody pay at that point.
Okay. Snap. Y'all doing it.
Well, speaking of people who pay, we are now going to continue this conversation for our patrons. And so thank you for everyone who joined on Facebook Live. But if you want to hear more.
Well, speaking of the fact that I was talking, no, I was just kidding, Seth. Let me give you guys the schedule for the rest of the day. For the rest of the day, and then we'll jump off and we'll continue this conversation. So, thanks for joining Robert Monson and Tamice Spencer with Subculture Incorporated. Our next up will be with Dave and Lisa Lunsford at 3 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m. Eastern, we start with Carl Otterwild and Renee Ocean, and that will conclude our regular speakers for the day, and then we'll open up with our music in the evening. So please join us back. We'll have Dave Lunsford at 8 p.m., Aaron Weiss at 9, Ukulele Russ and Amanda Martin around 10:30. So
So what's the next one?
The next one is Dave and Lisa starting in an hour from now. So,
All right.
later.
See ya.